Folks, welcome back to MSP Confidential. It's another chance for another great conversation. And today I welcome Mr. David Raissipour, CTO and CPO at ConnectWise. David, so good to finally have you on. It's been a long time thinking about how to get you in here, actually. And finally, I cornered Jamie Hunter in Dublin a few months ago, and we were able to get her to come in.
It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. I love these. I love an opportunity to talk about the things that we do, and I'm proud of them. So it's a great opportunity. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely a pleasure. Well, let me start with maybe some of your background. You've talked a lot about your life as you get out there on stage, and I think a lot of our stories weave into the stories we tell, even about the work that we're doing right now. And one of the things you've talked about is you were a Lego kid. You've tried to retire twice, and you came back because, just in your own words, you're a little kid with a Lego set you like building. And so I wanted to ask you, maybe as a starting point, what is it about building that you just couldn't walk away from? Like, what keeps you so interested in just continuing the journey and the work?
Look, I think we all like to learn. And that's really what's kept me coming back constantly. When I was a kid, you know, this is aging myself, but certainly in the old days, Lego blocks didn't come in sets where they had a finished product picture on the box, right? It was just a bunch of blocks. And it took imagination and it took time to go figure out what you wanted to build. And you would have that picture in your mind, and then you're off to build it, and you're trying to perfect it, and you take it apart and put it back together again to try to solve this image that you had in your head. So it's part of what drove me into engineering. It's what part of what drove me into product. It's always to try to go, imagine a solution and then go build it. Go look at what pieces you have in place, what pieces you need. Maybe you call a friend and say, hey, I need these three pieces. Can I borrow them from your set type of thing? So you can put together this vision of something that you had in your mind. And that's what it's been. Every time I've tried to retire, I jokingly say I've had two failed retirement attempts. At some point, I go, I'm not done yet. Like I still want to go do something, and the challenges of daily life didn't meet that yearning that I had to go solve a technical problem, right? And that's really it. I love knowing that someone has a challenge, they haven't figured out how to solve it. Let me go help you solve that problem.
Yeah.
And that's the kid with the Lego set that just hasn't stopped building homes and castles. And that's what I love to do. I tell people, like, I never want to be a CEO at a company. I don't want to do those things. Why? I want to build stuff. Like, I want to build stuff.
Yeah, well, let me talk about maybe this CTO and CPO convergence, because I think I've started to see this a lot more, and I think AI is driving a reimagining of org structures overall in a lot of companies. And this is not new to you. I think you were CTO and CPO at a previous role as well. But
Yeah.
maybe where was this tectonic shift of like merging these two things together? How did this come about?
It probably dates all the way back to my days at Microsoft, where they used to have these roles that were like product unit managers, where you ran product and engineering and QE, all of the associated functions. And it really was a role that came out of this this satisfaction that I get for being accountable kind of end to end, right?
Mm.
Um, and it's fun, it's more rewarding, but there's always like one person to point at and say, like is did you make a mistake? And if so, who's accountable for it? Well, I am. It also meant that for me, I got the two, at least for me, the two most interesting jobs in the company. I've always stuck around product and engineering side of the world. So if you split the two and say one's job is to go understand what the customer problem is and figure out how to solve it, and the other one is to go execute and make it perfect, right? Being able to do the imagine and the build and being accountable for both is really satisfying.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
can I ask you about the Imagine piece? Because I think even as recently as 5 years ago, the Imagine piece maybe would have been this long time horizon of like strategically thinking and planning and kind of this drawn out process, really. And I think obviously AI is driving a very different time horizon on this whole imagining or vision piece. How are you guys thinking about this, and how fast are you moving right now, just overall, because of that?
well, we've sped up quite a bit. Look, AI isn't about having a prompt and going to ask it to make your dog do a dance video, which is kind of cool. I've done them a bunch of times, but um, it's about how do you reimagine every process, every action as if you had an unlimited supply of folks that can reason on their own,
Mm,
think on their own, have almost unlimited access to information, um, and can help you optimize, right? So it has impacted everything that we do. From We're not an MSP at ConnectWise, but we have a service delivery arm that reports into me. And we have a managed help desk and knock and sock and things that we provide our partners. So that's part of what an MSP does. They have service delivery as well. So it's helped us reimagine that entire operation that was always about, well, we just signed up three new partners. We're going to have this much more volume of tickets we have to deal with. Therefore, I need Y more people in order to go do that work. It's allowed us to completely reimagine that. It's even allowed us to reimagine the life of a ticket, how it flows through the organization and how it gets resolved.
yeah.
Same thing with engineering. What was traditionally, and let's set aside the agile versus waterfall debate, because at the end of the day, you still have to figure out what you have to build, and you better have a plan before you go execute it. Otherwise, you just build incomplete stuff faster. Um, it, it allows us to imagine multiple possibilities simultaneously and find the best path forward.
Yeah.
I'm a Marvel fan. You probably see stuff behind me that's like a Captain America shield and stuff. And I think of, you know, uh, sitting there imagining the 4 billion possibilities of how it's going to end and being able to hand it off to AI prompts to go help me figure this out and doing that. Now put that power in the hands of engineers and think about how it optimizes their execution path. Because whether they're rewriting a piece of old technology on a new platform or whether they're trying to solve a new problem, create a new product, the reference material that you can tap into and test the possibilities at a pace that was never imagined before.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, Scrum teams that used to be made up of, let's say, 5 engineers and 2 QE people with a Scrum master to go do this, now a team of two or a team of three with a bunch of virtual assistants can accomplish the same thing in a shorter period of time. So it lets you rethink what you do. And it's not about how do I take that team of eight and figure out how to lay off five of them, but it's about how do I take that team of eight and maybe turn it into three teams and do three things in parallel. Uh, or turn it into three teams and turn it into a Hunger Game. Say, may the best team win. All three of you go solve the same problem and let's see what you can come up with. That is the power of leveraging this new capability and this new technology that we have at our fingertips to accelerate. to
Yeah.
imagine,
And
to
it's
solve
really
problems.
And it's really a mindset, isn't it? I think that building that fluency takes a little bit of time. You just have to kind of soak your feet in it for a little bit and get comfortable with the idea of tuning your thought processes to realize, oh yeah, I can bring this over here and get some additional input and context and the entire history of the world, as an input to my question. So it is fascinating, and I think it's a starting over type thing for a lot of people. I think you came to the US when you were 9, effectively starting over. And I'm curious if maybe that's too young of an age to understand the effect of starting over, or if maybe that whole starting over mantra has become a recurring theme in your life when you come to a new company. There's something that needs to be, nuked and paved, as I like to say.
Yeah.
The starting over maybe is a theme that under is an undertone to a lot of the things you do. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was a little over 9 years old when I came into this country, and yes, I was very young. But even then, you've got a big rock to push up a hill when you show up in a country and you don't speak the language. And what do the other kids do? They immediately start making fun of you. So you got to figure out how to fit in, how to learn the language, how to do those things. So you start pushing that rock up a hill. And it's really not that different, regardless of what your level is in an organization when you go into a new company, right? Um, I jokingly, well, half jokingly say, look, when I join a company, I go, look, we're going to make some changes. And it's not that I know all the changes we've got to make, but we've got to make some changes. Why do we have to make some changes? Well, I'm here not because the last person decided to go retire on a farm and raise llamas. I'm here because somebody said, hey, we got to do things a little differently, right? And whether it's people or process or mindset or attitude or any of those things, let's take a new path. But when somebody like me or anybody else comes into this role, there's a level of distrust for everybody that's there, right?
Mm,
So no matter what role you come in, no matter where you come into an organization, there is a challenge of I've got to establish myself, I've got to gain credibility, I've got to gain trust, I've got to get people to see that change isn't bad. Change is change. We got to test it to see if it's good or bad. And if it's bad, change it again. Like change it
mm.
again until you get it better. Um, I have one rule in every organization that I've been in for the past 25 years, which is I want you to come to me and say, I think your idea is terrible. The one rule is tell me what makes it better.
Yeah,
If you
solution
just want
oriented
to tell
thinking.
me my idea is terrible, well, that's your opinion. Congratulations, you're entitled to your opinion. But that doesn't help us do anything,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So contribute.
first of all, you dropped llamas like you. It was way too specific of a reference that there to suggest there's not a story behind somebody that retired to raise llamas on a farm. Is there something that we need to talk about
Oh,
there?
no, 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 no. I've always, in my family, we jokingly joke about llamas. One of my kids many years ago sent a picture of one daughter sent a picture of my other daughter with a llama that had a haircut. She goes, "Oh my God, you look like this llama." So llama has been the joke animal in my family for like a very, very, very long time. So unfortunately, there's no big hidden meaning to it. It just, who goes to a farm to raise llamas? Like,
Yeah.
uh, or
Well, yeah.
alpacas.
Now they're going to live rent free in my brain for the rest of this
There
conversation
you go. There you
until
go.
until I figure out how to create a parallel between llamas and MSP industry somehow
Yeah.
before the end of this conversation. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's talk about watches for a sec. You've talked about your
Yes.
fascination for watches. I think you've been collecting them since the early '90s, and particularly mechanical watches.
Yeah.
And maybe you've given yourself the permission of having an automatic mechanical watch, but reconcile this for me because I think in this AI era, we have this interesting thing that we're building for complete human disassociation to some extent. And so, mechanical requires a human to wind, AI removes the human entirely. Do these things conflict in your head to some extent?
Uh, no, and let me explain why. For me, it goes back to those Lego blocks, right? Mechanical watches are about precision and accuracy and mechanical things that fit together. It's like a puzzle, right? Um, so I've been fascinated with the mechanical movement within a watch, right? Not putting just a voltage through a chip in order to get that accuracy, but building a mechanical object that operates that way and provides that level of accuracy and consistency and precision. And it takes amazing skill to be able to build those things. And by the way, most mechanical watches are not made by hand anymore. At least the parts are not made by hand anymore. However, there is this fascination with this amazing precision instrument. I'm just as fascinated with things like jet airplanes because the engines are such a complex mechanical piece of marvel and engineering where tiny variances are the difference between catastrophe and perfection, right? So that's really been the thing for me. And whether it's a manual wind or an automatic, it's still the same underlying movement that makes it happen. But to think of the rotor on the back of an automatic watch as the piece of automation that we introduced into the
Yeah.
mix, which means that I don't have to run around and like manually wind 40 watches on different cycles so that they don't stop moving. Especially for anybody that's into watches, if you have mechanical watches that are perpetual calendars, man, now you got to go set the date, the day of the week, and all of those things and get the time right. And it's a real pain in the rear end. So you're constantly winding those things to keep them going.
Yeah.
So yeah, I took a shortcut. I collect a lot of automatic watches, although I do have manual, but it really goes back to my that same passion for building stuff. And I look at mechanical watches the same way. I think it's a cool piece of engineering.
Well, let me try and create a parallel here that maybe you'll identify with. I think there's this interesting fascination with the concept of hand built being sort
Mhm.
of the strongest variable to value. So when we go look at a watch, it's like, oh, this was hand built. Suddenly that creates this sense that is more valuable. And I think this is an interesting challenge for MSPs in the AI era that when the thing that we considered effort as the variable of value goes away because the effort suddenly is diminishing when AI comes in and automates all these things, I think MSPs are left maybe with an identity crisis around the value that they're providing, and this is
Right.
putting challenges into their pricing models. The consumption models of AI, kind of asking questions and stuff like that. And I'm curious how you guys are thinking about this, or if this crosses your mind. Like, how do we not let MSPs kind of enter a vortex of like, well, where's the value that we deliver if all the effort disappeared, right?
Yeah, so this is where I think it's a little different, and let me try to explain why. So, if we go back to watches, that hand-built watch is valuable because of two things: artificial constraint of supply, right, and nostalgia. Um, when you think of an MSP, artificial limit of supply isn't really there because as long as there's a demand, there'll be a supply for it. So no one's going to come in and go, I'm intentionally not going to provide technicians in order to solve a problem so I can increase the price for them. That's just not the real world. And if you're in tech, you shouldn't live in the nostalgic world. For MSPs, it's always about, and for really anybody in technology, it should always be about at what point do you not need my help to go solve a problem that you're not capable to solve on your own? And how do I move up that stack in order to solve a problem for you that you can't solve on your own? Or you don't want to solve on your own because it's not your expertise and core area of focus. Like if you were on a dentist's office, you don't really care about running your network and your IT infrastructure. That's not what makes you special. So you want to get somebody to go do that. And you need that person to constantly be working up the stack of what additional value that you provide. MSPs are the same thing. I mean, if you think about the way the MSP industry was born, long ago it was about actually fixing hardware, right? It was many of those folks that graduated from fixing things to providing services to moving up the stack. It was network and infrastructure, then security. Now many of them are doing consulting for their customers on how they can adopt AI. So having them walk up that stack is an important part. And then looking at everything else that they used to do and saying, how can I make that? faster, easier, cheaper, and make it available to my customers at the same
Mhm.
time is the game. So for any MSP, it should always be about how do I grow my business with more customers? How do I do it in a way where every time I add a customer, I don't have to go increase my own cost, right? Because again, we're all in business, unless you're in a charitable organization, to generate revenue and profits, right? Grow your business, improve your family's well-being, right? So for MSPs, they should be thinking about how do I optimize my costs? How do I optimize my resources? How do I grow my business by increasing my margins? How do I provide a better SLA? How do I provide faster outcomes? And how do I make it repeatable, right? That's the name of the game. Now technology is providing them an opportunity to look at certain things and say, I don't need to grow my business through linear growth of cost or people. I can focus on other things
Yeah.
instead of helping you reset your password and onboard a new tenant or a customer. I can actually help you understand how to use AI and how to not be a victim of AI by taking all of your company secrets and putting it into a prompt and sending it out into the world. Those are the things that should now be front of mind and top of mind for a lot of their customers, and MSPs have an opportunity to lead there.
Here's an interesting constraint or a trend or pattern that I'm picking up on that I'd love your comment on. It's maybe this idea of false constraints, and I'll give you an example. Um, Whenever I request an Uber or a Lyft, I've noticed this a lot more lately. Uh, you know, economy ride or whatever, and then suddenly I get a notification. Oh, you can get a faster pickup for $4 more, $5 more,
Correct.
or you can get an upgraded car for $10 more. Like always decline in my case. I'm thrifty like that. 2 seconds later, it's like, oh, we upgraded you to a faster pickup and a black car pickup at no additional
That's
cost.
right.
I'm like, well, where was the constraint in the first place? So, like, there's this manufacturing of false constraints. And I'm already starting to see the patterns around, okay, well, the default behavior here is that you're going to deal with AI. But if you want to, if you'd like a human to answer your call, you can upgrade your support call by, paying $5. And so I have concerns maybe about this false constraint of AI kind of becoming the default, and then a premium being put on the human interaction. I'm curious if this crosses your mind, if this is coming up at all in your conversations.
Yeah, yeah, look, I think human being in the loop and being part of interaction is always going to be part of the equation. And I'll give you an example. Um, think about the manufacturing industry, right? We always talk about manufacturing jobs. They're at the top of everyone's mind. But a manufacturing job today is not the same as a manufacturing job was 15, 20, 30 years ago. Yet there's still people working in manufacturing plants. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about manufacturing jobs. But in most manufacturing plants, people are actually supervising work that's being done by a robot, right? Nobody's really soldering anything or riveting anything anymore. So robots are doing certain parts of the tasks. People there oversee it. People are there to make sure things go smoothly. People are there if there's an issue, if there's a problem, and to monitor that work. We should think of AI and agents being the same thing as those robots in the factory, right? They will do things. They will do things more effectively than we do because they can work 24 by 7,
Yeah.
right? Their favorite football team doesn't lose on Thursday night and they don't come into work Friday morning in a bad mood, right? They, if you find a problem with one part of the assembly line, you fix it and the rest of the assembly line works smoothly and picks up that issue and just goes off and does the right thing. So some of those tasks are offloaded. Same thing with people. It doesn't mean that I necessarily have to charge you more for talk to a human, but when is a human going to add additional value, right? And when is it that it is worth it to you to receive that value? Your example of calling an Uber, they tried to walk you up the stack. Why? Because they thought telling you that if you pay $10, I will get the car there faster 2 minutes was going to be something that was going to appeal to you. That's an SLA, right? Just like we have SLAs in the service industry where you can say, for an hour response time, I'm going to charge you X. For a 10-minute response time, I charge you 2X. Some customers will say, yep, I need it faster. I'm willing to pay more. Some will say, nope, an hour is good enough,
Yeah.
right? Same thing. But if you find that nobody wants the 10-minute, everybody's going to take the less pay less for the hour,
And
and
they
you
wanted
have this
to,
excess capacity, you're still going to get it done in 10 minutes anyway. Which is why occasionally you get we upgraded you to an Uber Black even though you asked for an economy car because that Uber Black driver decided, I'm going to take this ride because it's better than nothing. Driving around wasting gasoline is not going to help me. I'm going to take this ride. It's the same thing in the service business. You don't have to put artificial limits. The market will drive demand and determine pricing. Now, your question is, do you have the ability to provide all those different tiers, right? And if you do, some people will want the higher SLA and that faster response time and willing to pay more for it. And some won't. They'll take the lesser one, and that's fine. Optimize your business for each one of those.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I definitely imagine a world in which a customer can pick the SLA for each ticket is like, no, I'm okay with the 48-hour response on this one. And then
We have that
somehow,
today,
well,
right?
yes, but I think it's predicated on this model of, if I get it off my plate sooner for the MSP, of course,
Correct.
then I've delivered great service, and this is a justification of value and all these
It's
things.
the
And yeah,
differentiation.
of
It is the
course, yeah,
differentiation, right?
yeah.
If all things being equal and I provided you better service at the same price, then you're going to stick with me. So how do I optimize for delivering better service while controlling my cost? So again, all being equal, you're going to pick the one that gave you more, right? Then
Yeah.
this is the way they will compete. Again, the same way we've competed in every aspect of every industry.
Totally.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things are being reimagined, no doubt. In fact, a few months ago, CRN, and let me, pivot here almost violently, but CRN reported this like wild article title was ConnectWise dismantles Asio to build AI-powered MSP platform. And I remember when I saw that the first time, I'm like, what? They tore it down? What's happening? So walk me through that moment where you guys decide that you just want to tear it down rather than, quote unquote, renovating.
Yeah. Let me set the record straight. We did not dismantle ASIO. Um, um, we did rewrite a bunch of it, and that's because we learned, right? I'll give you a very concrete example. I hope it doesn't bore you, but like we launched a bunch of stuff on ASIO, including some parts of our PSA product on ASIO. We don't call it ASIO anymore. We jokingly say it's a four-letter word. We don't use that four-letter word. It's called the ConnectWise platform. Um, and when we did, we built this capability where you could build your own kind of experience. You could put these widgets on a page and customize your own view. Well, our authorization and access layer at the time wasn't built in a way where widgets would inherit roles and rights from other widgets. Like we missed that. So we looked at some of those things and said, look, we're going to go completely redo how authentication, authorization, and access works across the platform. And that's what we've been doing over the last couple of years. We rewrote a bunch of the data platform. We rewrote a lot of common services that we had on the back end. So it was really an optimization and continued evolution of the platform because platforms never stop, they go on forever. Um, and then as we did that, we got to a point where we were ready to go, okay, platforms, nobody ever really versions them. But if we said like the 2.2 version of the platform, because you don't want to ever ship a 1.0, nobody wants to go on a 1.0, is ready for prime time and it's available globally, let's not call it ASIO because everybody keeps saying, hey, you told me about ASIO 4 years ago. Let's give it a different name. Let's breathe some fresh life into it. The concept was always phenomenal. I think people that preceded me, so I don't want credit for this, they really had the foresight to think about building a platform that enabled a lot of these capabilities that we have. We did not do the greatest job of executing against those objectives. We've gotten better at it. And as we got ready to launch it, we decided to change the name as well. So that's what we did. We didn't dismantle ASIO. That same promise, we believe we've delivered a lot more of it. We still have more work to do on the platform. And I've said this even on stage at events of like, the moment you see a platform that says, I'm done, get off that platform. It's dead, right?
Yeah,
A platform should constantly evolve to the needs of the partners and customers that use it, and we will continue to evolve the platform and make it better. But we feel that we hit a point in time where the application suite that runs on top of it has the capabilities it needs in the platform to deliver value. So here it is. And now we're going to continue to make it better and better and better and better as we go. So that's what we did. Um,
sure.
ASIO is a foundation to everything that we do, or the ConnectWise platform is a foundation to everything that we do. Um, it really allows us to operate our engineering team more effectively. It builds solutions that actually leverage pieces of technology that are valuable across products, such as ticketing or you know authentication, reporting capabilities, documentation services, reporting, all of these things that we take for granted that when they're in the platform, they just make life better for every application. Um,
Yeah.
and again, we're not the first ones to do this. One of my previous employers, they have this thing, some people have heard about it, probably called Microsoft Office, right? That thing is a giant platform, right? And it just happens to be a very tightly integrated and loosely coupled set of applications. And that's what we have as well that run
Yeah.
on top of that platform.
Well, I think the term platform has been used loosely, let's just call it, for the last little while, and I think a lot of people throw around platform and unified freely. And so I
It's
think there's maybe a trust tax that comes along with that. Maybe somebody else is making you pay. Nonetheless, I think there's maybe a limit to the amount of grace you get from your partners from
Yep.
MSPs after they've been promised a platform or they've been hearing the word for so long. And so if there's a skeptical MSP out there, and this is going to lead me to your love for complaints that you're grateful for, but if there's a skeptical MSP out there, what should they demand from you, from ConnectWise, um, before they buy the vision, this sort of new iteration of the platform, if
Prove
you
it.
will?
They should come up to me and say, prove it. Why should I trust you? I 100% agree with you. I think it's up to us to regain any trust that we've lost. It's not up to the partner or the customer to just give you blind faith. That is a recipe for running their own business into the ground. Um, they should make us prove it. I'm ready for that.
Yeah,
I will prove it. And if in the process of proving it to you, you tell me about the three things I got wrong, I want to know. I want to go fix it. I want to make it better. The fact that you looked at thousands and thousands and thousands of features that I built and came up with three or four or five things that I didn't do the way you wanted it means the rest of them were actually relevant. Otherwise, you would have walked away from it long ago,
sure.
right? So that to me means I built something that actually can impact the way you run your business and you're interested in running your business more efficiently. I want to know because I want to get that business and
I
I will
think
earn that trust.
this is something we were talking about backstage is you're grateful for the complaints, and I think it's interesting that we seldomly, even as vendors, get the recognition for the things that are working well. And I think this is part of what is a very thankless job for MSPs. Like, the baseline is you made shit run, and if you didn't, then I'm angry with you. But otherwise, there's no reason I need to tell you you're doing a great job. So I think it's tough sometimes to get the feedback that keeps people uh, excited and fulfilled and compelled to keep moving forward. And so it's great that you have the ability to take a complaint and use it as fuel. You told me a story about your days at Microsoft and somebody at the airport. Maybe you want to tell that story a little bit again, just to put this concept of why complaining in a productive way can be actually great for a product.
Yeah, I was telling you about this is wow, this goes way back. One at a time when I was at Microsoft, this is in the late 90s. I was actually sitting at an airport in San Jose, California, trying to catch a flight from San Jose back to Seattle. And this gentleman saw my laptop that I had open. And back in those days, it's not like they had Wi-Fi at the airport. I was actually working offline on my laptop. Um, and he saw the sticker on the back of my laptop that said Microsoft. And those days it actually just spelled out Microsoft. It wasn't the four box logo. Um, and he came and he started yelling at me. And he just told me how evil I was and how the products that I had built were horrible and how I'm trying to dominate the world and I'm killing competition and all of those things. And he kept yelling and yelling and yelling. And he was calling out product after product after product. And while he was yelling at me, he missed his flight. Um, and he ran up to the counter and realized he missed his flight. And instead of trying to book his own flight, he actually came back and started yelling at me again. Um, and I kind of went like, I'm really sorry that you feel this way. I can tell you, I don't ever wake up in the morning and say, how can I destroy somebody? I wake up in the morning and say, how can I solve a problem? But I will say this, it's nice to know that you care. Because clearly the stuff that I built, you've looked at.
Mm.
And the stuff that I built has had an impact on you. Now, if it was negative, I'm really sorry, but I appreciate the feedback. We'll see if we can do better. Um, and he ran off kind of mumbling and grumbling, and there was a bit of karma in there somewhere where the guy who was yelling at me missed his flight. But at the same time, I got to tell you, like it feels really bad, but here's a person who clearly we touched a part of his life, right? Which means he actually cared about the stuff that I worked on. And caring doesn't always mean loving it, right? The he could hate it. Still a strong emotion, which means I'm doing something that you care about, and I want to make it better.
Yeah.
So that was the thing, and that experience really stuck with me from all those years ago. It's been almost 30 years now. But I never forget that experience. And it was really one of those moments where I said, look, feedback's feedback. Take it. Do something with it.
Yeah. Love it. It's a mindset. I think you either are in a place where you can always constructively take that feedback and use it as your fuel, or it tears you down. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry for the folks that get torn down by the bad feedback. You have to definitely build that skin over time, and it can be
Oh,
really, really
absolutely.
powerful.
You know,
Yeah.
they say the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference.
Right.
And that's what I don't want. I don't want somebody to sit there and just tune it out, not care. That's when
Yeah.
I've failed.
Yeah. Well, I think pivoting back to maybe the AI conversation, I think indifference plays a role here. And I think you've talked about how people manage this AI shift through natural attrition. If somebody leaves, this is the point maybe where you hire for a different profile, you take the savings, you just maybe put an agent on that same task to some extent.
Right.
So maybe let's get a bit more specific on that. And who's that first role at an MSP that should maybe never be backfilled? Because I think this is an interesting thing. People are kind of rushing in. We saw these great layoffs, and now sort of the great rehire is happening. It's like, oh, we realize we shouldn't have fired these people. And I think MSPs may go
Right.
through a bit of the same thing. Curious on your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think the best way to look at um, what is that role that becomes obsolete, let's say, over time, is to kind of first analyze your business operations, right? Because I am a true believer that if you don't have a good process and you automate it, you get bad results faster, right? Just don't do that. So if you actually analyze and look at your business and say, where is the tip of where things come in, right? And where's the start of my interaction with my customers that determines whether they're happy or dissatisfied with my service? It all starts with an alert, a notification, or a ticket that comes into the organization. First, somebody has to look at it, determine that it's a problem, what type of problem it is, what the urgency is, assign it to the right person, hopefully, to go fix that problem. That determines the rest of the experience that that customer has with you. It's Just like when you pick up the phone and call the airline, the first person that routes your phone, your call, is the person that determines how quick an answer you get, right? If you get put into the endless loop of wrong person, wrong person, wrong person, that breaks. Then you got to look at that and say, of the type of information that triggers this workflow, how much of it is new or unique, and how much of it is things that I've seen before? So can I draw on my experience to help optimize this, right? For an MSP, for most MSPs, well over 90% of things that you see, you've seen before, right? There isn't a day zero piece of something that you have never seen before. Very rarely is there such a thing.
Sure.
There certainly happens within cybersecurity, less within IT environment. So given that that knowledge exists, that history exists, you look at how can I determine a decision tree and a decision path that could be automated so that I can make this part of the process go faster and more consistent, right? Triage and dispatch is the very first step into any organization for something that comes in. For most folks, again, that is what sets them down the path of a quick resolution or not. That's what determines whether something gets resolved the first time through or whether it's going to have to be escalated or whether it's going to have to be reopened, whether it's properly classified or assigned to the right board or assigned to the right individual, all of those things, including do I bring in historical knowledge, right? I've seen this ticket before of this incident. Here's the 15 times that I solved it. That is relevant information to add, right? And by the way, document every part of the process and all parts of your logic path. That is the best possible place when you look at IT service delivery that you start this journey.
Yeah, that
Best
context
place.
is the biggest, as you call it, oxygen for AI, right? That context, that
Correct.
data. Yeah.
That context. It really is. So I was sharing with a bunch of our partners. Look, here's what we have seen in our own operations when we look at optimizing, right? Here's what percent fewer escalations we have. Here's how much it increases our capacity to process tickets and alerts that come in. All of these things are because context, historical data, previous decisions that you make can help optimize your path forward. Again, something that AI is really, 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 really good at. Analyzing massive volume of information, determining patterns, and using that to drive decisions and logic forward.
Yeah.
And that's what it's really good at. So the first role that could potentially be um, fully optimized, I'll call it, is that funnel into the organization of triage and dispatching all the alerts that come in. For somebody like us at ConnectWise, I mentioned we have service delivery, even though we don't have, we're not an MSP. I operate
Anymore.
as yes, we have a SOC, right? Our SOC literally manages millions of managed EDR endpoints. Millions. It operates at a scale that is far beyond your typical MSP, right? Um, through the optimization that we did ourselves, we took something that was a 1 hour SLO and turned it into a 15-minute SLA, right? What does an SLO mean? We're really, really going to try, but if we miss, oh well, right? Down to a 15-minute guaranteed SLA. We managed to increase the volume of alerts that we handle 300% while
Yeah.
improving our quality of service. So for our partners, our customers, it means a better outcome in a shorter period of time, right? That's what they care about. They care about the outcome. Like, why did we even start there? Why did I pick SOC as the place? Well, the same wonderful technology that helps us do this also drove this sense of urgency. AI took issues that you thought you had an hour to solve and made them so urgent you only have minutes to solve it. When you thought you had minutes, now you have seconds. So if the problem moves at that pace, your solution darn well better work at that pace as well.
Yeah.
So
This,
that's why we started there.
this brings me also to something you guys have been saying a lot lately, which is the future is predictive. And I think this is such an interesting contrast for MSPs who, for a long time, talk about proactivity and predictivity to some extent, only really to kind of land always 90% reactivity. So talk me through why this positioning is so important right now specifically, and how that's maybe changing the landscape for MSPs materially.
Sure. This is something that I think the IT industry is kind of following in the footsteps of the cybersecurity industry, to be honest. And I come from a cyber background of quite a bit of time. So for cybersecurity, the industry shifted from I'm going to put a bunch of stuff in place that makes it hard for you to get in. And over the years, we realized, wow, that really doesn't work. To I'm going to put a bunch of stuff in place to constantly monitor, to detect problems before you do, right? Knowing that problems are going to happen. I can't prevent the problem, but how quickly can I detect it, right? And how quickly can I resolve it before it slows down your business or brings down your business, right? Same thing is now really shifting to the IT segment of the industry. This is where IT use cases and security use cases really start to collapse into one. Um, for IT, we really have always worked, and I said this a few times in presentations. I say most of us work in a reactive model, and I immediately get a negative reaction, right? Don't call me reactive. I have automation. I said, look, we work in a reactive model as well. This is not about just you. But the whole process starts with you told me you have a problem. Now I'm going to go solve it. By definition, that's reactive. Okay. But if you look at the problems that are brought to you, many of them have indicators that you could have detected, right? And I generally start with indicators that people don't want to argue against. I say, look, think about them as indicators on a device or environmental type indicators. Slow networks. You can detect slow network speeds. You can detect that your laptop is running out of memory because you have too many things open. You can detect slow performance issues. You can see that somebody tried to log in 5 times and they're having trouble logging in. All of those things have indicators that something is not working the way it should. Now, if you have the intelligence and the capabilities to be able to go detect that, go resolve the issue before the person has to send an email, send a Teams message, pick up the phone, however they want to reach you and say, I want to do this. That is the predictive mode of operation. And by the way, predictive does not mean do it silently. Predictive means fix it and leave an audit trail. So in case you made a mistake, you can back it up. It also says whether a person did it or an AI agent did it, there's always accountability and history of what was done. And I can promise you, if an AI agent does it, it probably documents itself better than the person did it, right? I also jokingly say, I have an organization at ConnectWise. I have almost 1,600 people in my team. I have like 60% of the company. About 1,000 of those are in R&D. Man, if I got a nickel for every time one of my developers actually documented the code they wrote, I'd be retired, right?
For the third
They
time.
don't, but sometimes they do. And sometimes the documentation doesn't even match everything they did. And by the way, same thing happens in service delivery, right? Um, so this audit trail, this repeatability, this being able
Mm.
to anticipate your customers' needs is real. It's not future, it's not imagination, it's not I joke about Minority Report if you remember that movie of
I do.
uh that's not it. It's not about, predicting bad things. It's about anticipating your customers' needs and being proactive about solving it for them. That is what this world of predictive IT and predictive intelligence is all about. It's not about a single piece of technology. It's about an approach to how you solve problems. And like I said, Cybersecurity industry has been down this path for many years of trying to anticipate and react. I mean, the entire world of EDR and MDR, all of those things is about detect and respond, not wait for the report and then respond.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing that we're talking about, and technology has evolved to a point where we have all those pieces in place to be able to do this in a broader setting than just cybersecurity incidents. We can do it in a broad IT environment and be able to anticipate needs. Like I said, it's not just devices. Lots of things can happen. You could get into a world where you can actually tell the sentiment of employees in your organization, right? You can tell the sentiment of, see who's unhappy. Instead of sending out a survey that says, "Are you happy by working here?" You will know. You will know because of the tone that they use in their emails and their Teams messages, and all of those things will be an indicator to when an organization is not healthy, right? And now what do you do about it? All of those things exist, but before we get people concerned about, oh my God, somebody's reading my email, let's solve the known things. And by the way, nobody's reading your email because they want to know what you bought on Amazon. They want to make sure that you're happy and productive, because if you're happy and productive, the business does better.
A lot of these things, David, are what I would call maybe the commoditization of MSP to some extent, because you could argue that the majority of MSPs are all doing the same thing at this level. You know, the predictive things, the RMM, the agents, and so on and so on. And I think there's a palpable shift, and I know this because ScalePad is right in the middle of this intersection of people making this move to the conversations around business outcomes and truly, working with businesses on the things that matter to them. And I think there's an interesting challenge for MSPs to make this own shift for themselves because, just going into a predictive mode from a technical tool stack perspective doesn't necessarily give them the tools to have a different conversation on the client side around the client's goals and the client's outcomes specifically. Are you seeing this shift from your end, kind of a demand to help us have better conversations with clients as well? Tell me a bit about, what you're coming across.
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, we think of commoditization as a bad thing. It actually isn't. When you think of things that are commodities out there, they're commodities because you need them, right? Not because you stop needing them. So it just simply means that there are lots of options, right? It might not be a differentiated thing, but you still need it. So the services that we're talking about being commoditized, people still need, right? Now, if you can optimize those so your people aren't doing it, in theory at least, it frees up your people to do something else. I don't know of an MSP that has a customer where the customer is not also trying to figure out, hey, how do I use this AI thing? Right? Or how do I block this AI thing because my employees are taking my sensitive data and putting it into ChatGPT or putting it into Claude? All of those conversations around governance, usage, data loss, all of those things are conversations that MSPs should be having with their customers as well. They need their help. We talk about MSPs shifting to be managed intelligence providers instead of just managed service providers. The service is becoming a commodity. It's still a necessary commodity, but it is becoming a commodity. So how do you shift from providing a service purely based on SLA and price to something that you can add more value to your customer? Help them adopt new technology.
Yeah.
Think of how MSPs help their customers make the move to the cloud.
This
They've
is
been
a
doing this for years.
this is a pivotal shift in the makeup and behavior of an MSP, however. And so this is
Correct.
a super interesting conversation because I think many folks have not necessarily built a bench around this idea of adoption, education, enablement, leadership,
Yes.
change leadership. And so this is kind of the crossroads that they find themselves in, which I find super
It
interesting.
it changes the people you hire. It changes the profiles. It changes the skill
Yeah.
set. It changes all of those things. It certainly changed it for my org. It's changed it for my service delivery organization. It's changed it for my engineering and product management organization. It's changed it for my UX organization. It has changed things. So I'm finding that I'm now looking for more senior people who, by the way, are more expensive, but can hand off certain tasks that they have the confidence to agents, but they have the knowledge to be able to actually verify that the results are good,
Yeah.
right? Um, so it changes the makeup of teams. It changes the skill set that you're looking for. It changes the mindset of the employees because they don't look at the technology as a threat to their livelihood. They think of the technology as a means of actually getting more done, right? You make yourself indispensable, not dispensable, by
So
embracing some of these things.
let me get your read on something that I've been exploring, and maybe this is a great topic to wrap up our conversation around. And it's this idea of maximizer versus focuser. I think what you just described, this engineer that can uh, give that context. You've talked about how important process is to the 80/20 process that people forget. We need that context now more than ever before. And there's maybe a challenge that a lot of MSPs have grown or come from a place of maximization of triage of time. Anybody that has free time, give them another ticket because we got to work on more things. And I think it's
Yep.
becoming really apparent that having that extra little bit of time to go evaluate the things that the agents worked on, to have this time to solve an issue at the root cause level,
Right.
is creating the need for more space and time to focus. And I think it's in contrast, in contention with this idea of maximization, which a lot of MSPs were taught to do, because the input is time and you want to maximize the shelf product that you're buying, which is time from people. But the output is kind of changing to this: how do you deliver value to a customer? That's not necessarily measured in the output of time from your perspective as an MSP. So a lot of ideas there, but this contrast between maximization and focus, I think, is a really interesting challenge for MSPs going forward. And how do you see the importance of using agents to create time for focus as opposed to create time to work on more things?
Yeah, I think that the shift is really one of um, measuring based on outcome, not effort and task. And this is where as you pointed out, we need a lot more thinkers that question why something is done and how it could be done better,
Mm,
because the old proverbial turning of the crank is something that I can hand off to somebody, right? So your job is to look at that crank turn and say, is there a better way to do that? Not just turn it faster, right? The old Henry Ford thing of, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. I'm sure I got the wording wrong, but that was the gist of it, not a car. He saw a problem and he said, there's a better way to solve it, not
yeah.
just take the same way and do it faster, right? And that is what it is forcing everybody to do, whether it's us or MSPs or every single business that you can think of, that do versus the task versus the process to do the task. That 20% is what changes the outcome of the 80% effort, right? Um, and what you get out of that 80%. And it is so critical, and we forget about that. That constant process optimization. Is there a better way to do it? Just because I did it this way yesterday does not mean I should do it this way tomorrow.
Totally.
That's what changes the mindset, the focus, the type of skill,
Mm,
the type of problem solving, those types of things. I don't I want to keep giving my previous employers a free advertisement, but I remember when I interviewed many, 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 many years ago in the mid 90s at Microsoft, I was given some of the most obscure interview questions that you could possibly imagine. And I remember sitting there going, why are they asking me this? Like, Who's going to go? You're not hiring me to go design an oven for somebody in a wheelchair. Why are you asking me that question? And the reason they used to ask those questions, they didn't want to know what you know. They wanted to understand how you think. That becomes more important. How do you question what you did and constantly look at making it better?
So
How do
powerful.
you think about your empathy of an understanding of the customer problem, not the solution you have built, right? That's what changes the profile. And that, I believe, is true for everybody in every industry.
That is so powerful. And I see that shift happening right now because the need for the business outcome conversation is changing the profile of person that we want to bring in, as opposed to hiring in our, and I say our because I was an MSP owner and we try to hire in our image for for a long time until we realize, we need to actually pattern interrupt this whole thing. Uh, David,
I
what
don't
a
do that actually. It's really funny. Many of the folks that I work with today have worked with me in at least two or three other companies, and when you meet them, none of them are like me. Like the worst possible thing in the world would be like to have eight of me in a company. It would be disastrous. We'd never get anything done.
this is a skill, my friend. I don't know that people naturally know how to do this because the reality is, I think the default behavior is we need to have more people that can do what I can do to do more of it at scale. And so there's kind of this unnatural kind of scaling thought process behind it.
To my
But
core, I believe in diverse thinking and diverse ideas.
yeah,
At my very core, I truly believe that.
you've unlocked the next level, definitely. David, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. I appreciate your time so much. Thanks to also to Jamie Hunter, who was kind of the catalyst to getting us together. Um, IT Nation Connect ANZ coming up next week in Sydney. I'm going to see you there, right?
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing you there in person. I'll be on a flight Saturday and heading out there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again. Thank you, ConnectWise, for making David available to have this conversation, and for everybody else joining. We're here every Friday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern for MSP Confidential. We hope to see you at the next one. Hang out backstage, David, for a minute, and I'll be right back. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the opportunity.